Well, God bless you one and all, and welcome back to the Bishop's Corner. And of course, my name is Bishop Dr. Herbert N. Scott, the Chief Prelate of Liberty Hall, Cathedral of Praise, right here in the heart of Brooklyn. And we also do want to thank God for the man of God himself, Philip Reed, who is doing a fantastic job. And he is affectionately known as Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil, well done, young man. God bless you. We want to thank God tonight for the panel that we do have. We thank God for the right Reverend Dr. Heather Francis that is with us tonight. Let's make her feel welcome. We want to thank God also joining us on the panel. Dr. Phil himself, man of God, always a pleasure to have you, sir, joining us. We want to thank God for a woman of God, Ebony Walker Shirless, that is with us tonight, and she is our therapist, and she'll be answering and getting into the details of many, many things that we are discussing tonight. We also want to thank God for a woman of God that we love and we respect, Kadisha Simpson. It's a pleasure to have you on tonight as a guest. And let me say, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank God for Pastor Jean Price. She's been on a few times, and it's as if she's family. Jean, we now see you as family. Thank you very, very much for coming on, young lady, and we will be hearing from them shortly. But we have a fantastic program tonight. We are dealing with grace and forgiveness. Grace and forgiveness. Sexual abuse, stories of betrayal, and the process of restoration. I'll say that again. Stories of betrayal and the process of restoration. Now, let me say this to one and all, that next week, the 21st, we'll be looking at a documentary from the beginning to the end pertaining to sexual abuse. So we're asking one and all to please weigh on in. However, tonight, because of time and so forth, we will be just showing you the trailer to this. So this time, Dr. Phil, it's in your hands, sir.
Every 9 seconds, a young person is sexually abused or assaulted. That horrific statistic was true for me. My name is Jean Price. I was sexually abused from the ages of 3 to 15 years old. Join me as I introduce you to 5 other brave women who shared their journeys. We went from being victims to being victorious.
I was sexually abused by my stepfather from age 4 to 12.
Not understanding how many times I find myself in the bathroom in my birthday suit, bent over the tub and doing all types of sexual things.
I can remember him sitting on the edge of the bed. He had on a dark brown bathrobe with nothing on underneath.
I am a survivor of 17 years of sexual abuse. It started when I was 4. The first person was one of my grandmother's boyfriends.
We lived in a constant state of fear.
I remember being raped by the stepfather. And I remember him telling me, if you tell anybody, I'll kill your mother and your brother, and you'll be left here with me.
I heard my mother crying. Wow. He had beat her in her face. And I remember like it was, yesterday, her eye was swollen. We really went through a lot. We went through a lot. I lived with that trauma for a long time. If you know somebody that's been abused, you want to see this. Help us share the message of freedom by watching this film. For more information, please go to amazinggracestories.com.
Wow, thank you very, very much, Dr. Phil. Thank you indeed. At this time, we are so grateful to have Kadisha Simpson with us and Pastor Jean Price. This time, I'll be asking Kadisha just to please tell us What happened, young lady? How did it happen? Talk to us, please.
A pleasant good evening, everyone, to our host and production manager, Dr. Phil, Dr. Scott, to our guest panelists, Ebony and Pastor Jean, and Dr. Heather. Good night. My abuse started at the age of 4. It was my mom's nephew that came to visit. When he came to visit, we were living in a 2-bedroom house. My mom and dad in her room, and I was in my room. And this particular grown man, I believe when I was 4 years old, he was in his 30s. I believe 33 years old to be exact. And when he came to visit, he decided he was going to spend some time. And my mom had him sleep in my room, in my bed with me. And that's how my abuse started. There were times when I remember telling my mom that Jeff was touching me. And all she said was, "Jeff, stop touching Khadijah." I remember there were times when he was doing heinous things to me and I was screaming and crying. And she would hear me crying and she would say, "Khadijah, why are you crying?" And I would never answer. He would put his hand over my mouth and answer for me, "Oh, she's playing." But my mom never came to look, to check, to see what was being done to me. And this abuse took place until I believe I was about 8 or 9 years old when one of my uncles came to visit, and I told my uncle that Jeff is touching me and mom isn't doing anything about it. And my uncle hauled him out of the house and they beat him in the parking lot in front of our home. And that was the last time I remember about Jeff. And that's my story, without going into too much graphic details. At times, I didn't want anyone to come over. I used to have children come over and play from my neighborhood, but I tried to protect other children by not having them sleep over. So whenever I remember a particular friend of mine, without calling any names, she wanted to sleep over and I told her, "No, I don't want you to sleep over," because I knew had she sleep over, I knew what was happening to me would happen to her. And I remember it happened to her. I didn't see exactly what happened, but I remember playing in my room with my friend and he came in the room, pushed me out of the door and closed the door. And I knew what was happening to her. And I was threatened. I remember at times he would pull my hair and hold the knife to my neck and told me if I told anyone that he would kill me or slice my throat, or I wouldn't like that was going to happen to me. So there was a level of fear that was inflicted. But even though he was doing what he was doing and the threats he made, I tried to communicate to my mother, because at the time my mom was the only one with me. My dad was here in the States. I tried to tell her in so many different ways, but she wouldn't listen. She didn't connect the dots. She didn't understand the signs. And I'm not sure if she knew what to look for. And that's my story.
Okay, before we should hear from Jean Price, Pastor Price, Kadesha, let me just ask you one question. Was this just done by that one person?
This was done by this one person. Mm-hmm. There were attempts that were made after me as I got older, but I was able to protect myself then.
Okay.
But as a babe, as a child, 4 years old, this took place over a range of, I believe, 4 to 6 years, if I'm remembering correctly, that I suffered the abuse. And that particular person, he was the only one that did it.
Okay, you said from 4 years old to 9.
Yes.
And when you did get it over to your family members, they took him out and they gave him a good beating.
Yes.
Okay, thank God for that. He deserved it and deserved it well. Okay,
Yes.
and let me say candidly, honestly, that's what should happen to most of these people, if not all of them. Okay, at this time, we'll be asking Pastor Jean Price to weigh on in and tell us what happened, please.
Good evening, everyone. It truly is an honor to be before you again on this Thursday. I thank you for the opportunity to be able to share my story. And again, thank you for showing the prelude to what we're going to be seeing on next week. My story is similar to Khadijah's. I was molested from the time I was 3 to I was 15. So for those 12 years, it was my stepfather. And it's so interesting. I asked my mother recently, I was born in Virginia, but we moved to New York. And I said, well, why did we come here? And my stepfather was in the service and my mother had 5 children. So, I'm a lot older now. And I realized that part of the plan was she was very vulnerable. She was young. He was able to manipulate her. So I wound up in New York and the abuse started, like I said, when I was 3 years old. I can remember my stepfather sitting me on his lap, just fondling me, different things like that, and doing other things. But the main part of it is when I moved out to Long Island, he worked for Pan American Airlines. I don't know if anybody remembers that airlines. It's so old, but he worked at night and we were home during the day. And he had a Pacific MO that he used to, my brothers were out the house. I never was allowed as much as my brothers to go out and play. So he would come into my room. And I remember those times, sort of like what Khadijah was saying, that he threatened to kill my mother. And that was the thing that made me keep a secret, because that's one of the manipulating forces that predators like that use, is threatening and secrets. And he told me he would kill my mother if I ever told anybody. So I held it. I carried that weight all those years from the time we were in the city till I moved out to Long Island. And it was a hard weight to carry. So I suffered a lot with anxiety. I suffered panic attacks all the time and nobody understood. And, as a little kid, it's so interesting how, when kids say, well, I don't want to go, or I don't want to do this, as adults, with our generation, my mother or my aunts, they forced us, well, just go, well, just do this. And sometimes you have to recognize that maybe there was a reason, or maybe that child don't want to go over there tonight, or maybe that child doesn't want to be around that particular person. So it's so important to understand or look for the signs. And I said last week, I always felt I was just totally invisible because nobody recognized the signs. Nobody saw what was going on, but they all thought I was emotionally disturbed. So I remember this one day that my stepfather, I just had a feeling that he was going to kill my mother that night. And I found out later on he was going to try to kill her. And he tried to take her out the house, but I kept running downstairs. I kept interfering between the two of them. And I remember so distinctly that he threw me up, went upstairs. He threw me on top of a bunk bed and he began to hit me and, beat me. And I climbed off that bed again and I ran back downstairs. I kept begging my mother, don't go tonight. Don't go tonight. And I realized now that I didn't know then, it's a resilience that God had put in within me and the courage that he had given me to stand, though I went through a lot. But the abuse was hard. It was very hard. And I remember when I finally told somebody, I was in my, I think 9th or 10th grade of high school, and it was the Christmas break. So I couldn't take it anymore. So I ran away from home. I was 15 and I told his mother, who was my Nana, we consider her Nana. And she didn't protect me, but she protected him. And one of the things about that was sadly, I have to say, is that he also molested his first wife had a daughter, which wasn't his. He molested her too. And Nana knew about that. So again, the protection was not the child, not the victim, but it was the person that was the victimizer. So she called him to the city and she told him what I had told her. And he picked me up from New York City to bring me back to Hempstead to go to school. And we came around the Belt Parkway, and I remember he took his fist and he punched me in the face. So it was hard. It was a very hard part of my life, but I'm just grateful to God that I got through it.
Thank God. Thank God.
That's a part of my story.
Both of you. And let me say this honestly, you two ladies are very strong. You have tremendous strength. And I say that from my heart, because just to come on and to tell the story, it takes a lot. I don't think I could do what you're doing. And I say that from my heart. Pastor Price, you said that this was kept in secret until you eventually ran away and you told someone. Looking back now in retrospect, okay, do you think if that was to happen all over again, that you would have opened your mouth sooner or not?
I'm not sure, because I feel this way. The person that was supposed to carry me dropped me. So it was almost as if I was the adult and my mother was the child. I went through all of that protecting her. So I can't say that I necessarily would have changed what I did, because again, in my heart, as a child, you don't want to see something happen to your parent. So in my mind, the whole thing was protect her. She didn't protect me, but I felt the need to protect her.
God bless you richly. Okay, well, we've heard from Pastor Jean Price and we've heard from Sister Kadisha Simpson. Before we should go into the questions, okay, we do have the panel. We do have Ebony, Dr. Heather Francis, and Philip Reed on board. Are there any questions that you'd like to ask, gentlemen and ladies, before we go into the actual questions now that we have heard their stories?
Well, okay, I'm going to go first because I'm looking at Minister Heather and she looks like she wants to go first. And but I would love to. First, I'm going to say this. I like what Bishop Scott said. It takes a lot of bravery to go beyond the fear of the past. And a lot of us are afraid of the things that the monsters, we would say, that are in the dark of our past. And I admire you. I admire you greatly for being able to understand that your testimony is going to help someone else. I don't doubt one bit that this is being done for a purpose. So I salute you on this. My biggest observation, though, is that as you try to get your voice to be heard, I realized that because you were a child, a lot of times we don't think that children's voices are significant. So because they have imagination, we think that everything is on the platform of imagination. So when you, Kadisha, you're saying, look, something is happening, mom just thinks, well, that's Kadisha just being Kadisha. Mm-hmm. You reaching out to your mom, we tend to not think of our children as future adults. So we don't pay attention to what they're saying. And one of the biggest takebacks I have from this is that your children are future adults.
Yes.
And if they say something's going on, I would prefer to believe my child, even just based on these stories. I would prefer to believe my child and be wrong. Mm-hmm. And to not to believe them, and they are right. And so we really need to take into thought how we comprehend children. My son is 22 now, and I cannot imagine that he would go through something like this and not even be able to mention it to me. Mm-hmm. The other part of it is the threatening.
Yes.
I find threatening to be a common part of your stories. And it seems as if that has to be initiated in order for you to be silent. Let me ask you this. What are some of the emotions that went through your mind as a child? If you can go back to that, what are some of the thoughts that went through your mind as that threat came to you, what was your first initial response?
For me, Dr. Phil, tears. It was, I was constantly crying. I cried during many nights. I cried myself to sleep. There are many times I questioned if there was a God and why has this happened to me and what's wrong with me. There was another time when there was a sense of regret. I felt neglected because here I am. I'm like, Lord Jesus, how much more can I spell it out? I'm a child. My mother should know when I say someone is touching me, that that's all it takes for her to listen and to investigate or pay attention. But I felt alone.
Dr. Price, Pastor Price.
For me, it was the ultimate for me was fear. And fear has a way of paralyzing you, not just in your voice, but just even in your emotions. Everything just ceases. Fear just grips you in a way that everything was just hard for me. It's like you stop growing, you stop moving. Everything just stops because you know that something's going to happen. So that fear it just overtook me. And another thing I felt honestly was abandoned. I felt abandoned because I had no one to turn to. I finally did when I was 15, which I told you the outcome, but I felt totally abandoned. Like abandoned, how do I tell my brothers? So my brothers couldn't help me. I just felt totally abandoned, totally by myself. And then I didn't even have the mental capacity as a child to carry heavy emotions. It wasn't my time yet to be able to carry all that. I didn't get there yet. I hadn't matured yet. And I read this picture one time that said, it hurt me when you made me a woman when I was just a little girl. And that, when I read that, I said, wow, it spoke so many volumes because I was put in a position before my time.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Wow, you were put into a position before your time. Wow, that is powerful. And that's a message right there. Put into a position before your time. My God, Dr. Phil, I see so many aspects of that particular message right now. Yeah. God bless you richly. But I would like to ask Ebony, our therapist, these feelings that Pastor Jean and Kadisha felt, are these feelings common among people who have been through something like this? You're muted, Ebony.
You're muted.
Yes, these feelings are very common when it comes to victims of abuse. Certainly that fear, you can experience that anger. Definitely when you've tried to reach out to adults that are supposed to be your protectors, and they're not believing you, or they go to protect that offender, that abandonment is going to rise up. And I think Kadisha mentioned the, feeling like God, had abandoned you as well, or wasn't there for you. Definitely, people will struggle in their faith, when experiencing traumas such as this, where it can be questionable for children. God is supposed to be my father. He's all knowing, he's all powerful. Why didn't he protect me? And they can start to internalize and feel, that they are being punished in some way for something they did. And that they were deserving if God let it happen. So it is important, to have people that are available to be able to be support. I thank you guys for your strength in being able to share your stories, because this is a tool to strengthen others that are going through instances like this, to be able to speak out as well.
So, Ebony, seeing that you are a therapist, how difficult is it for people who go through things like this to have like a normal relationship, down the years to come?
Mhm. It is so very common for there to be relational struggles, interpersonal struggles when it comes to that. And that's why it's so important to talk about it, because the more you talk about it, the more you are able to heal from it. Holding it in, you are not able to go through and start with the healing process of what has happened to you. It will definitely affect, other relationships where you are withdrawing from friends. It may be a way of protecting them because you know what's happening in your household. You don't want them to, come over and be exposed to the same thing. So whether it's protection or fear, you are withdrawing from adults because you feel that no one is there to support you. No one is going to believe you. Another common thing is not being able to express, not because you won't get support, but some children are afraid of how their parents may respond to the abuser. In the case I know, the first thing we think of is, yes, they deserve a nice butt whooping. But in cases such as this, where your parents now go to advocate for you in this way, and then they end up arrested or in jail as a result. So some have shied away from sharing information because they're trying to protect their parents in this manner. But it is very important, to talk, to seek help, professional counsel, to go to the authorities regarding this and try and get, the proper services implemented as soon as possible.
Beautiful. Anything else we said, panel, before we go into the questions, Dr. Heather?
Yes, good evening, everyone. God bless you. It is such an honor to come on again tonight. I thank God for our Dr. Phil, who was the visionary for the Bishop's Corner. Of course, thank you, Bishop Scott. You're always such an excellent facilitator and moderator. Thank you, guests, for coming on. Ebony, wonderful position that you are in to be able to give us sound advice as to how we can go through the healing process for those who have gone through these experiences. Kadisha Simpson and Pastor Price, I commend both of you for your courage for what you've gone through. Kadisha, I want to start with you. First of all, I just want to commend you for having the courage to say something to your mom, but also for a child that young to exhibit the responsibility of having to protect other people that adults should be protecting. And you were carrying this weight of being a parent as a child. And one of the things that I found out in my research of this subject, not just knowing it personally, but just from, you have to be able to have empathy cognitively from both sides of the coin. And psychologists say that a child doesn't completely develop until they're in their mid-20s. And so if that is the case, then we're asking these children who have been victims of this type of abuse, that we're literally putting burdens on them that they're cognitively not capable of comprehending. And so we can sit here and say, oh, she did a great job, wonderful. But cognitively, it has to be the hand of God that literally allowed you to be able to operate, and not just operate, but come out of this to the point where you can speak on it and encourage someone else, and for you to be sane. And so listen, let's talk about it, because they said you're not developed cognitively yet. And so listen to how articulate she is. She is a successful Black woman who has a solid marriage and a family. And so I give God thanks for you. Amen. I really do. I want to celebrate you tonight as a Black woman. I just want to celebrate the God in you, and I celebrate the courage for both of you that you have taken to be where you are today. And so one of the things that I found out, and I'm going to ask the same question to Pastor Price, because Pastor Price, you're just phenomenal to me. The fact that you were able to overcome all of this, I tell you, accolades, flowers, just recognition, acknowledgement. I give God thanks for the anointing that rests on your life, that you can be where you are today, to be an inspiration, not just to women who can hear you, but to a congregation and educate them. And so this is what I want to ask both of you, starting with you, Kadisha. They say that there is a level of control that a perpetrator or a victimizer exhibits over his prey. And it's control. It's controlling and manipulation, threatening, fear, as we said. And so I want to know from you, did you feel like you were being controlled? Did you feel that the situation was being controlled? And did it make a difference that it was a family member? And it's a complex question. Did you love your perpetrator? Because one of the things that I've read in my studies also is that when you love the person, when you trust the person, that it makes it that much harder for you to hold that person accountable, even though you know they're doing something wrong, but because they are a family member, because they are someone who, you know, the rest of the family looks up to, the rest of the family trusts, you know. Did it make it that much harder? So number one, did you feel the control? And also, was it someone that you genuinely cared about? And how did that make you feel for both of you? Kadisha?
For me, yes, there was a level of control. And why there was a level of control, I was raised as a child to, you know, I'm from the Jamaican background, Jamaican upbringing. My mom was a higgler back in the day. And for those of you who don't know what a higgler is, she used to buy and sell. So she would travel, buy candy back in the day and sell when candy was back in the 80s, or when it wasn't candy, it was shoes. And I was known as, oh, Kadisha, mom travels, so she rich. So everyone wanted to come over to be a part of, you know, just to participate and share and get whatever they could whenever they knew my mom was traveling. But to protect what she did as a business, as a single mother at the time, she had her nephew staying with me while traveling. So that was a level of control. And no, he was not somebody that I didn't care for him. A matter of fact, just to shed some light on my story, as I was angry at my mom, and why I was angry at my mom, I'm adopted. And here I am with my adopted mother. Wow. I have my biological family, and here I'm being molested under your care, when I try to tell you in so many words that what is happening to me. And, you know, I just, yeah. And yeah, the signs were there. I tried to communicate. I didn't want to stay, you know, whenever she was leaving to go to the store, or I was like, Mom, I don't want to stay. Can I come with you? It was like, no, you love road too much. Stay yard. So I had to stay home with this person and endure even when I didn't want to. And as I shared, because I knew what was being done to me, I feared it happening to others. So when other little girls wanted to come over and play, and I knew he was there, I told them no. Wow. And there is a weight that I'm carrying still, that an experience happened to a friend of mine, and she's a lesbian. And I can say that that contributed to who she is today. So yes, there was a level of control in the home, from my mom, not knowing, not paying attention what's going on. And I think there was just a level of, I think I don't know if naive is the right word to use, but how can you in your right mind leave your baby girl with, I know we say it's family, but that just goes to show you that for me personally, with my kids and my family, I trust no human flesh. So man, woman, boy, or girl, no, I don't do it. So when we're at the Christmas party, when we're at church, I'm the one that's constantly checking on the kids. I'm like, leave the door open. I'm sneaking in. I'm like, what are you guys doing? So it's not a paranoia, but it's just
an awareness
that I had to own as a child, that I now carry as an adult. Wow. That I facilitate that with my surrounding. So no, I don't do sleepovers, and no, I don't want no one to come and sleep over. And that's just the way it is. And I pay attention to family. I'm going to be real honest with you. There was a time after I had my daughter, my first daughter is 14 years old. And as she was growing, my husband would rock her in his lap. And I'm like, babe, I'm sorry, don't do that. That's a trigger for me. And I'm like, I don't care if it's your daughter and it's my child. That's a trigger for me. I don't like it. Don't do it. Wow. And he had to understand, respect, and appreciate my decision as her mother and as a survivor of child abuse, what to do and what not to do. Wow. And I just want us as adults to be aware that children communicate in different ways, and we have to be cognizant of our surrounding and or upbringing of our children. Never say never. Be mindful. Do not have your children have their own room and then share with family that's visiting. Don't do it. Don't have your child have them give up the room completely, but don't have them share it. Put them in your bed if you have to.
Yeah, excellent point.
But do not have anyone share your space with your children, because then you just never know. You just never know. And that is what I would want everyone to take away from our session here tonight. Just be aware.
Excellent point. So question for you before we go to Pastor Price with the same question. Would you say that parents, or particularly mothers, are naive? Because that was an excellent word you use. And I do believe that some mothers are naive. And I believe that some mothers are not just naive, but they trust too much when it comes to their children, or they should be protecting their children, but the naivety or that trust of everyone else around them, could that be a contributing factor to the number of violations that are occurring in the homes?
To be honest with you, I later learned that my mom herself was abused as a child. So I can't speak much as to her upbringing and what happened to her, but I see how it contributed to her ignoring or overlooking the signs and symptoms of what was being done to me. My mom even came out and say that, why didn't I say he was touching this particular part? She was like, oh, all you said, he was touching me. And I would say, but mom, that should have been enough for me to say to you that this man is touching me and you paid attention. So yes, there is a level of naivety, thanks for the word, on her part. And I think there is also a personal struggle within herself as a woman and as a mother, where she failed. And that's just the honest truth. When we make mistakes, we have to own that we made a mistake. And up until this day, my mother has not said to me, Khadijah, I'm sorry, what happened to you?
Could I throw something into that?
Wow.
I thought about this as we were going through this study and going through our Willie Lynch study as well. I learned something about train of thought or mindsets and how they're developed generationally, right? Women, the value, I'm going to talk about the value first of all. The value of women has not been focused on until maybe the last 50 years. If we do realize that women have come from the place of being conceived as property. Women didn't even have the right to vote.
Oh man.
I'm going somewhere with what I'm saying. Yes, I believe that there's this freedom that is taking place where women are now fighting to be seen as people. And some of the older generation, they're caught up in the mindset of their own value and impressing that value onto their children. So I don't believe it's naivete in the sense of I'm ignorant of. It's like you're trained to see and not to see. I remember that Pastor Price, she was talking about when her mother would walk past, she saw her being violated and walked past it because who knows? Now we're talking, these are generations. Who knows what she saw in her generation and what her generation saw prior to that. Now, remember, we're not too far removed from our slavery days. We're not too far removed from that generation of thought. So even just as Black people, we have to realize that we have to break away from some of those old chains that have been handed down from time to time, where we see and don't see, and we hear and don't hear. We have to say, look, my child has as much value as that other child. Therefore, I'm not just going to let my child do whatever, go wherever, hang out with whoever, or trust what somebody else is saying. And I believe that that's the issue. That's the issue that we're having, is that there's this generational mindset of the value of my daughter, the value of my children. And I mean, just the idea that a mother can receive $5,000 and say, well, yeah, okay, now you can go and sleep with my daughter or sleep with my son. 5,000, that's the value you place on your own child.
But I think the problem is even bigger than that. And I don't think that race has a whole lot to do with it. It does play a factor in the history of our people. However, let's go further back. In the book of Genesis, chapter 34, when Dinah gets abducted and she's raped, this is something that is universal. And the fact that he held on to Dinah and then goes to the father and he's trying to negotiate to marry her after he has abducted her, after he has raped her and violated her. Now he comes and says, let me barter with you. I got some cows, I got some ox, I got some pigs. Can we talk? And let me keep her. And you know what happens by the end of the chapter, the brothers get mad. They go and, becomes this big slaughterhouse. And there's fighting and killing. And unfortunately, blood had to be shed. But what I loved about that story is that someone did come to Dinah's rescue. Her brother stood up. Her brother stood up and said, we're not going to allow you to get away with abducting our sister and raping her, even though our father had the audacity to even entertain negotiation, which goes back to what Dr. Phil is saying as far as the value of women. And so not everyone devalues you, women of God. Not everyone thinks less of you, but there are some brothers out here. There are some people out here that value you, that see you, that will say, I see you. I see your pain. I see what you've gone through, and I value you. So I will never allow that to happen to you and someone get away with it. And so I think that's also the message that we have to convey tonight. Yes. That naivety has to be completely wiped out of our minds. It starts with having the conversation. It starts with talking about it. It starts with people like Pastor Jean Price, they have manufactured this wonderful movie that is telling the story to the point that it will impact and change cognitive empathy, so people will be able to empathize, not just cognitively, but emotionally, and understand what these women have gone through, and that it is just plain wrong. So
thank you, Dr. Heather. But let's just do this now. The same question that Dr. Heather asked Kadisha, can we just pinpoint that question to Pastor Jean Price? Yes. Because of time, we've spent 50 minutes and we have not yet asked the first question. 50 minutes is gone. Okay, Pastor Jean Price, would you please, woman of God?
God bless you. Very good question, Dr. Heather. Definitely control. When I think of control, I think of two words. I think of power and I think of influence. And when you think of those power and influence, it has the ability to cause somebody's behavior to change. So as I was going through, I thought about I had to perform to keep the peace.
Wow.
Because if I didn't perform, or if I didn't make myself available to be molested, it would tear up my house. And I remember that one night when my stepfather came home and he tore everything up in the kitchen and kicked us out the house. Cold. We put everything in garbage bags, my mom and my brothers. So control was definitely a contributing factor. And people like himself thrive on that. Now, we understand there was something going on within him, but it fed something in him. It made him feel that what he was doing, he can keep doing. So control was definitely a key factor. And that's what a lot of it is. A lot of it is being able to control the victim, control the person that's involved in it. And when they have that, know they can get you with that control, that's when they think they have. Now, when you stand up to the control, that's when the problem starts. When you get some wits about yourself and you say, no, I'm not taking this anymore, then they can't handle it. And then it goes into something else. And then it may go into more physical, I'll speak for myself, goes into physical abuse, but they can't take when you stand up to it. But sometimes it's worth standing up to it because you get to the point that, you have to. But it was definitely control, a lot of control. And when you talked about the love piece, when I think of the love piece with my stepfather, because I didn't really have my real father in my life, I looked at it more as a misplaced love. Because again, right, he's supposed to be like the father that's supposed to love you, the daughter. So in loving him back, because what he was doing, I saw it more as misplaced love for myself. Because you can't really, it doesn't make sense. And so it's how do you love somebody that's hurting you? It's misplaced. So somehow in my mind, even as a child, though it wasn't fully developed yet, it was a misplaced love.
We could take that even further, but because of time. Now, in light of what Kadisha said, okay, and this question I want to put to Ebony. Kadisha said that one of her friends, a girlfriend of her, was molested and she became a lesbian. She became a lesbian. I'm putting this to Ebony. Do a lot or what statistics do we have on girls who are molested becoming lesbians? Are there any, or do many, or what? What would you say as a counselor? You're muted.
And boys too. We should include the males in that also.
Now, I'm not sure of the exact statistics when it comes to that, but it is definitely a common factor where victims of molestation may turn to, same-sex relationships, maybe due to the trauma, you have pulled away from having a relationship, or you have a fear of entering into relationships with a particular sex. So it is a common factor when it comes to who they choose to have relationships following.
Okay, thank you very much, young lady. Thank you much. Okay, Dr. Phil, we have 35 minutes to ask the 3 questions. So
oh my goodness.
35 minutes. Question number 1. What is the effect you would like your story to have on our audience tonight? Pastor Jean Price, how say you, young lady?
You're muted.
Wow, that's a powerful question. Thank you for that. When I think about the documentary that's actually going to be shown next week, I think about my life, oftentimes when, before COVID, when I would go and I would teach and talk about this subject, because I see it like a disease, and a disease is something that's definitely detrimental to somebody, right? When I think about it, I think more from the perspective of being a catalyst. And a catalyst is a person that's used to cause change. So my prayer and hope is that people will look at my life, hear my story, but understand the victory that's within the story. Because you can, I could have stayed where I was, broken, depressed. I could have stayed there. But like I said before, the resilience and the anointing of God that's on my life, no, I had to take what I went through and use it to help other people. So that's what I want people to know, that you can come through it. And I'm not saying it's not a process. It's not going to be easy, but I am a living witness of what the other side of through looks like. And
Pastor Price, before we should hear from Kadisha, young lady, God bless you richly. But how would you support someone who's going through or is going through what you have been through today? How would you support them? Yes.
I'm sorry, I muted myself. I would, one of the things I definitely am a firm believer on, and I think I said it maybe in our first show, is being a listener. It's so important to make a safe space for somebody to want to come and talk about it. Make sure that you're a listener. That is extremely important. And if and even not just listening, being a believer of what the person is saying, because people can listen. Like I had somebody listen to me, but they didn't believe me. And there is a difference. So not just listening, but also being a believer of what the person is saying. And because you may have just that one opportunity, it may be that one time that child, that person, young, old, a man, a woman, a boy, that comes, and that may be the one time they need you the most. Because I know what it's like to want to commit suicide. I know what it's like where there was no hope and I wanted to give up. But I want to be that one time. I just want to make sure that I have everything lined up for the one time. And that's important.
Beautiful. Thank you much, young lady. Kadisha, same question. What is the effect you would like your story to have on our audience tonight?
I just want our audience to be aware. That's my standpoint, to be aware for those of us with children, as I shared last week after our session. I just want us to be aware of the signs and symptoms of child abuse. And I also want us to be aware of the signs and symptoms of the effects of child abuse from a mental perspective. Be alert with your surrounding, your family and your friends and your gatherings with your children. And that's just having the conversation, that being aware. I think we hit the nail on the head tonight with the word naive. I think we've come a long way with being naive, saying that it will never happen when it has happened and we don't know.
Jean said that she contemplated suicide. Kadisha, did you went through this from age 4 through 12. Did you ever think about committing suicide?
Thanks be to God, Dr. Scott. I was filled with the Holy Ghost in church at the age of 11 before I baptized. So I think God saved me just in the nick of time. I give all honor and glory to him. I could not have gone through what I've gone through and come out on this side. Thanks be to God. And for salvation, I've learned to truly love. I've learned to truly forgive. And I just want to let my audience know tonight that if you should ever come across someone that has been a victim, or if you yourself are a victim, be patient with yourself. Understand that the healing process is sometimes like peeling an onion. There are layers that you're going to have to go through. So do not put a time frame on people's healing and their journey. Be patient and understanding with what they've gone through and how they're trying to come out of it.
Okay, Ebony, let me ask you a question, young lady. People or young ladies who have gone through this, do most of them consider committing suicide?
There is a large number that do consider committing suicide, unfortunately. And it's the pressure, the way to, just alleviate that pain of going through this over and over again and being exposed to this trauma, especially when you don't have anyone to talk to about that. So the weight of all of this, having to carry that on your own is a lot. And that's why, again, constantly I'm encouraging, if you reach out to that first person and they don't listen, keep telling until you have that one person, because it just takes that one, to listen in order for us to start getting help.
Okay, beautiful. Before we should get to question number 2, Dr. Heather, Dr. Phil, any questions you'd like to put to our
I wanted to ask Ebony a question. Because psychologists say that our brains are not completely developed cognitively until we're in our mid-20s. When a young child, whether it be male or female, when they are violated or raped and go through and experience sexual abuse at a young age for a period of time, does that them propel them or throw them into a cycle of abuse, even if they have left that initial relationship and been taken out of it? Does it them almost kind of mark them to be in an abusive relationship, because abuse then becomes their norm? Abuse becomes their comfort zone. Is that the case?
So definitely we have either extreme it can go to. You can have, the person that is a survivor of abuse that will, be an advocate. They are constantly that protector for other people to ensure that they are safe. And then you have that one will continuously be that victim. Once the abuse has started, they are at higher risk at future abuses. And how we say developmental wise, their cognitive abilities, their processing, they may place themselves at risk due to that initial abuse. They have that feeling of no self-worth, this is all I'm useful for. They may have given up hope themselves. So it's no attempt to really fight back, when it comes to other people trying to victimize them again. So that would perpetuate that cycle. It is not uncommon for, victims to have repeated abuse later on in life and into adulthood.
And also, just so everyone knows, adolescents, because they don't have, they have what's called an underdeveloped decision-making capacity, and the prefrontal cortex does not have the wiring to understand long-term effects of current impulses and current behavior. And so that's really what causes them to perpetuate that same cycle of abuse over and over and over again. And it is so, I mean, unfortunately, your body keeps score. When you're violated, your body does keep score.
Okay, Dr. Phil, any questions?
Yes, my question to you is on your way to where you are right now, what was your biggest obstacle to overcome? What was that thing that had you pause in your process to wholeness?
For me personally, it's I struggled with forgiveness. I struggled with forgiving my mom. And I had to learn to forgive, even though she has not said, probably what I ever wanted to hear from my mom was, Khadijah, I'm sorry what had happened to you. I had to learn that I have to forgive and love her, even if I never hear her say those words. So that was my biggest, and still is sometimes, my biggest struggle. Understand that forgiveness is, as I said, like an onion. It takes time.
Takes time.
Yeah.
Thank you much, Kadisha. Dr. Phil, you're reading my mind, because the question that I was going to ask, Kadisha, is how did sexual abuse affect development in your case? Same question. Please do not read my mind. Okay. Now, one of the things I want to say is this, that as human beings, people who have been violated, you can win if you don't give in. You can win if you do not give in. Please understand that there are certain prerequisites that must take place in your life. It's like a child learning to walk. The child has to creep before it starts walking. Okay, it's got to walk before it starts running. Prerequisites, and these prerequisites must indeed be met. Yes, there are going to be feelings of distrust. Who can I trust after being violated like this? Okay, there's some questions about intimacy. Does this thing really work? I tried my best to get this over to mommy. She didn't even believe me. So how can I be intimate with anyone? And then you feel that powerlessness and so forth. But let me say this, that one can win if they definitely don't give in. We have approximately 20 minutes for 2 additional questions. And let me just ask this second question. For someone who is experiencing sexual abuse right now and isn't sure what to do, what would you tell them? Kadisha.
Speak up. Speak up. That's the more you talk about it, the more you put the devil to shame, and you'd be surprised how God can turn what the enemy used for bad for good. Here we are. We're advocating for other victims. So speak up.
I take it, Kadisha, that you do have children, yes? And you definitely, I'm sure, have set boundaries. And even if you don't say certain things, the boundaries are there. God bless you, young lady. Definitely.
Yes, Dr. Scott.
As you even mentioned that even when your husband was rocking your baby, your child, and so forth in his lap, it was like, honey, please don't do that. Amen. So naturally, if a stranger were to come and take your child and do the same thing, do you think that most likely you'd use a frying pan on him? Boundaries. So important. Amen. Okay, Pastor Jean Price, how say you, young lady, for someone who is experiencing sexual abuse right now and isn't sure what to do, what would you tell them?
Well, I have to honestly ditto Khadijah tonight. Be the voice of the person that could not speak. You have to speak up. The most important thing, and I think we shared all throughout these segments, is the silence and the secrecy. And the only way you overcome it is to become the voice. Sometimes you have to be the voice even for someone else, even though no one was the voice for you.
No one was the voice for you. Any questions from the panel?
I have a comment.
I do too.
What I realize is even in this statement that most bacteria thrives in darkness. You have to shed light on these issues in order for them to go away. And I'm just glad that we're having a conversation on it, and we'll continue to do so.
Beautiful.
I just wanted to comment on what the last responses from Pastor Price and Khadijah. Excellent advice. And statistics say that sexual abuse is the most underreported act because of unbelief. And I know Ebony can echo accolades to that and say yes, because they don't feel like they're going to be believed. And so one of the things that we want you to know tonight, it doesn't matter where you're listening from in the world, where you're watching from in the world, we want you to know that we believe you and we're here for you, and you have someone, and you have an entire panel of people who will believe you.
Absolutely.
And we're here for you.
That's right.
Amen.
Okay, before we should go to question number 3, Khadijah, did you ever feel as if what you were going through was your fault?
Yes, Dr. Scott. I felt, as a child, I questioned if there was a God. So yeah, I felt it was my fault. I questioned, why is it happening to me? At one point, I got radical with questioning God. I looked up to the sky and I was like, God, is abuse written on my forehead? And what I went through just brought me to a place of just having some open, drastical conversations with God. And the more I invested time and relationship with him through prayer and fasting, the more wholesome and healed I became. So, yes, it's a process.
I hear you. Okay, but Khadijah, let me just ask you one more question. Okay, if you suspect right now that a child is being harmed, you suspect it, that they're being harmed, what would you do now?
I'm going to confront the person first and foremost, and then I'm going to call the authorities.
Confront the person and then definitely call the authorities. Now, would you do that because of what you went through, or because you believe that's the thing to do?
Both. I went through it, and I know it's the thing to do. When I told my uncle and he pulled Jeff out of the house and they beat him to the point of almost death, a weight was lifted off my shoulders to know that my perpetrator has finally been caught. But then, as an adult growing, I had to learn to forgive. Forgiveness is not only for the person, but it's also for you, the individual. And you have to be so poised that you're able to understand from both angles. I'm not saying that what he did to me was right. Yes, what he did to me was wrong, but I have to extend that same grace and mercy that God has so graciously given to me through salvation to him. The word of God reminds us that in 1 Peter 4:8, love covers a multitude of sin. So irregardless of what has happened to me as a child, and irregardless of what's happening to you now, God forbid if you're in this situation, speak up and understand that you're not alone. We're here for you. As we've said throughout the segment, find someone that you know that you're comfortable to share with and share, and let that healing process and journey begin.
Kadisha, after that young man was beaten to a pulp, did you ever see him again?
No, I have not seen him again. A matter of fact, a year and a half ago, my mother, so my mom lives with us. My mother pulled out his program he died, and she pulled out the program from his funeral service. And she said, Khadijah, do you know who is this? And I'm like, Mother, what's wrong with you? Why would you want me to remember that? So, no, I have not seen him. And I'm free.
So you would say that you have recovered from this?
Yes, I have recovered from this, and I'm still recovering from this. I don't think you can ever say you've completely gotten over it, to be honest with you. Yes, verbalizing it, shedding light on it helps, but it's still a journey. It's still a process. One of my biggest struggle now, even though I am here now, sometimes it's just trying to have a conversation with my mother, and just as we played on the word naive tonight, just sometimes a whiplash of her being naive takes me back. And I have to snap back and be careful not to go back to that dark place. So it's a constant journey.
Thank you indeed, young lady. Thank you much. I never ever thought that this would happen, but guess what? We are down now to question number 3. Wow, question number 3, the third question. Thank you, Jesus. So how has this experience changed you? And how has your faith guided you in the process of wholeness? Pastor Jean Price.
God bless you. Wow. Well, it's definitely changed my life. And like I said, I'm on a road to just trying to help as many people as I can. And I got saved when I was 16. And I remember when I went down in Jesus' name, nobody saw this but me, but there was a beautiful white cross in the spirit realm that I saw. And I always felt like that was like God giving me a sign that he's been with me. So my faith has carried me all the way through all of that I have gone through. And even what I do now, I still hold on to my faith, because it takes faith even to go back and help other people. It takes faith and it takes courage. It's constant warfare, because you got to remember something. You really think the enemy wants to let people go? Absolutely not. You know, he's a roaring lion going about seeking whom he may devour. So my faith is guiding me and leading me, but I also know I have to always be prayerful and watchful because of the thrust and what I feel God has given me to do. So my faith is definitely leading me, but I'm thanking God for the hedge as well.
Thank you much. Kadisha, same question.
Yes, I can say my faith has truly helped. It has helped to mold and foster a healthier relationship with my mother, especially. I've learned to love myself even when I felt unlovable. I've learned to love and appreciate myself when I just don't feel like it. And it was just speaking affirmating words or affirmations of God, true sound scriptures, like I'm fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God, just owning those words, I'm the apple of his eye, I'm loved, I'm appreciated, just reaffirming myself in that true unconditional agape love of God. And that's what has held me and kept me so far.
You're muted, Bishop.
So as a counselor, would you say that the person's faith does help in the healing process?
Yes, definitely. Faith is definitely a great coping mechanism. Having a higher power, knowing, having relationship with God is important. So I think, that is really the best tool that we have to be able to go to the Father, and pray on things and open up in ways that we can't with other humans, can definitely keep us uplifted.
Okay, we've heard from Ebony, and we've heard from Pastor Jean and Kadisha. Okay, questions. We only have roughly 8 minutes left.
Oh my goodness.
Dr. Heather, questions you'd like to ask?
I just wanted to kind of echo what Ebony was saying as far as your faith being a part of your healing process, but also have her speak to the fact that counseling is needed along with your faith, because I don't know how many people are familiar with the series that is out on Netflix. I would encourage anyone who has gone through the struggles of sexual abuse, or if you know someone who's an abuser and you want to try to understand what happened or what's going through their mind, take a look at the R. Kelly series. Take a look at the Billy Milligan story. It's called The Monster Within. And it shows you how most of these people who have become perpetrators, they actually began as victims. And R. Kelly actually was a victim from the age of, I believe, 6 or 7 until he was 14. And it was a family member who was an uncle, and he ended up telling his mom about it. And his mom was bought off by him giving them $5,000. And she continued to allow it to happen because she had money problems and she was living in the ghetto. When it came to Billy Milligan, he actually declared that he had multiple personalities, which he did kind of, and R. Kelly also exhibited that same type of mental dysfunction manifestation. However, it is something that happens as a result of the abuse that they went through. And so there's another part to it. R. Kelly used to call pastors in and say, pray for me. I have a problem. Help me. They would lay hands on him, pray for him. And he would think that he would magically be healed, which he wasn't. He continued to do it. And so faith without works is dead. Exactly. And so there has to be, it may not be the correct context of that scripture. However, you can have faith. And yes, there are times when in the Bible where you'll see someone experience a miraculous healing immediately, but then you'll also see some manifestations where Jesus will say, go and do something. And it's a process of maybe washing. And so some people have to go through a process of healing. And so they may need to have a counselor. So Ebony, I'm sure you can speak to that a bit more than I can.
Yes, definitely. So if anyone has an inclination that someone is being abused, or you have gone through abuse yourself, I would say reaching out to the nearest child protection agency, reaching out to the authorities. There are resources available. When they start the process of the investigation, they will connect you with different resources in order to assess your needs. But connecting with a therapist is important. So we need a combination of tools, to help guide through that process of healing. But definitely, first step is echoing Pastor Jean, Kadisha, with that speaking up, knowing that you are not alone. And for all of the onlookers, we have that bystander effect where, a lot of people want to stay back and, I don't want to get in their business. What happens in their home happens in the home, or maybe someone else is going to speak up about that. And you're waiting for someone else to do the job for you. And I want to urge anyone listening, that we are all mandated reporters in the state of New Jersey. So even if you don't have confirmation that an abuse is happening, if there is any inkling of suspicion, make the call. Because you'll have professionals that go out and are trained to assess the situation to determine whether or not there is a need for protection for that child.
Beautiful. Ebony, let me just ask you a quick question. I know that time is coming. Okay, but children who are abused before they can even speak, before they can articulate words, do they most of the time suffer from amnesia? They forget it?
We have a lot of times they will forget it, but a lot of times, just because they are not verbal, they are expressing that pain. They are crying out for help. I've had cases where there have been infants, young as 9 months, that have been victims, when you're concerned with babies and crying out, you think that it's some other type of physical pain and can't identify it. And unfortunately, these predators are starting this young. So it's really important to, pay attention. Some things I want to urge parents to do, start early, having that conversation with your children. Start on their level, talking about things, explaining to them, appropriate touch. And I shy away from using that good touch, bad touch, because sometimes this inappropriate touch may feel good. Our body is going to respond in a way, and we don't understand how, even if you don't, want something to happen, and your body is inconsistent with your desires. So knowing that inappropriate, unwanted touch, that older people should not be touching you on certain body parts, knowing that, unless it's for health reasons, you're going to the doctor, you're getting checked out, things like that. You shouldn't be exposing your body to anyone, nor should they be exposing their body to you or having you touch them. So really having these conversations. Another thing is telling them the proper names for their body parts.
Right.
I've had cases where children have been trying to tell someone that they have been abused, but they didn't know the proper name to call their body part. Had a young girl about 7 years of age. It took years before someone realized that her pocketbook being touched was her private area. And she had been telling people. So talking to your kids, letting them know the proper names for their body parts, and that it's okay to tell people, no, you can't touch this. No, it's not okay.
Well said indeed, young lady. Thank you very, very much. Well, Dr. Phil, we only have 4 minutes left. 4 minutes left. We've heard a lot and we have said a lot. What should we really take away from this conversation tonight? Dr. Heather, woman of God, what should we take away?
Very quickly, we shouldn't have to always learn from pain. Sometimes we can learn from other people. And we're here to inform you. And so I just want to encourage everyone who's on the line that even if you've gone through abuse, find your purpose, because even finding your purpose can save your life. And if you're experiencing any type of abuse, know that you have a voice, that you can be heard, and we hear you. We hear you.
We hear you. Thank you much. Ebony Walker Sherrills, what should we take away from this conversation tonight?
That, again, we hear you. We believe you. We're going to be here to support you and protect you.
Thank you much. Pastor Jean Price.
One of the things I wanted to say is that when you think of ing on the end of a word, it means it's a continual process. I just want to I want to say to someone, I'm sorry, tonight, that it is a continual process, but you can get through it. So.
Thank you much. Well said. Kadisha Simpson.
Tonight, I just want to say, be aware, have the conversation, speak up, and be true to who you are. And just know that you are loved and appreciated regardless of what happens to you.
You are loved and appreciated irrespective of what happens to you. Dr. Phil, what should we take away from this conversation tonight?
My takeaway is something I discovered years ago, and that is that your voice has value. Your voice has value. When I was younger, I was very withdrawn and very quiet. But I learned as I got older that if I don't use my mouth, people will take advantage of me. So I started learning to verbalize and use my voice. And I just want to encourage someone that your voice has value and don't let anybody take that value away.
And Dr. Phil, you certainly use your voice remarkably. Thank you, young man. Thank you. Life seems to have its unexpected turns. There's some things that we never, ever expect from life. But one of the things I do know is this, that having faith in God and having a relationship with God, God never ends on a negative. I have been from Genesis to Revelation, and when God speaks, he never, ever ends on a negative. Keep your faith intact, and you will find that God never, ever ends on a negative. That don't mean that you won't go through, but God never ends on a negative. Once again, we just want to thank you for weighing in to the Bishop's Corner. Please be aware that next week, the 21st, we have a special documentary that we will indeed be showing entitled Sexual Abuse. Please weigh on in. Tonight, we just want to thank the panel that we have, Reverend Dr. Heather Francis. We want to thank God also for Dr. Phil that's on with us. Dr. Phil, pleasure, young man. Job well done. We want to thank God for Ebony Walker-Sherless, woman of God, a counselor. Thank you very much for weighing in. Thank God for the lovely Kadisha Simpson, and also for Pastor Jean Price. You made it work tonight. Thank you much for weighing into the Bishop's Corner. See you next week. This is Bishop Scott saying good night now. We'll be meeting next week.